So we're here to talk about the Caliphate. It's a word that's been in the news recently because ISIS have declared one in Iraq and Syria. Some people agree with that, some people don't. And I want to know what all of your view is on the Caliphate, what it means to you, if you think it's a good idea, what you think of ISIS's Caliphate. And so if I can start by asking you each to tell me what the word, what the concept means to you.
For me, the Caliphate is a government, a state, which rules by the Quran and Sunnah, and those laws are over Muslims and non-Muslims, and there is one leader, and that state has borders, but those borders they expand and they literally annex other countries until the whole world is literally under that governing authority.
Can I ask you, Omar, what the Caliphate itself means to you?
Caliphate means to me a leader, someone who should unify the concept of ummah between Muslims and non-Muslims alike. That's all it does mean. If there's any persecution of anyone else outside of what they consider to be Muslim or outside of the ummah, then they are not the true Caliphate, because what Islam stands for, what it should stand for, is for the unification of everyone.
The Caliphate that we are seeing currently emerging, well, a Caliphate to me is a totalitarian state, and to me it's wrong. I wouldn't agree with any state that seeks to curtail anybody else's rights based on their religion, their sexuality, their creed, the way they decide to worship, or their political leaning. And to me, a Caliphate seeks to control all of that, and if somebody doesn't fit the right mould, then they lose their rights.
Khilafat to me, it's not a political thing for me. I think it's more of a spiritual leader. So it's a divinely appointed spiritual leader, in my opinion, which unifies the whole ummah. I think there's two things that a Khalifa has to fulfill. He has to bring people closer to God, and he has to unify mankind.
Coming from a Shia point of view, I don't believe that the Prophet Muhammad left behind no designated leader. I personally don't agree at all with what's happening at the moment with having a Caliphate state set up in Iraq, in Syria, because they're going about via their own agenda. They are killing people that goes against their rules and regulations, and that is not what Islam promotes.
Everyone here lives in Britain. Everyone's relatively happy, or they wouldn't be here, hopefully. Why would you want to live under a Caliphate, or why would you want to live under ISIS version of a Caliphate?
When I look to Britain, and I can speak as well as an ex-non-Muslim, you know, issues like smoking, free mixing, music, and a society which is largely based on nudity, pornography, it's not something which any practicing Muslim would enjoy living under. So whether ISIS or any other state implements the Caliphate, I think any practicing Muslim who hears that the Caliphate has been implemented and the laws of the Quran and Sunnah are being established, they would flock to that place.
What about if they want to live under the law of their own God?
So what happens to people who don't want to live under Islam in your version
What
of the
happens to
Caliphate?
those people who don't want to obey the law of Britain? They get arrested.
I'm a Muslim, I'm living very well in this country. It may not be a Caliphate, but I have all the beneficiaries here. I've got NHS, I've got schooling that I can go to, I've got healthcare, I've got the ability to step out of my house without the threat of unfortunately being killed, whether it be by someone from ISIS or whether it be by the government. I'm protected in this country as a British citizen. What you're saying is that Sharia rule should be implemented. If you're not happy with Britain offering you all those things, then go to a place where you feel that Islam is being implemented in its proper format, and then live by what is over there. But because you won't do it, because I know full-heartedly that you won't be able to survive in that kind of place over there, because the beneficiaries that Britain is giving you here, you won't get that in another state.
If you go to a country where there is a majority Muslim and the leader is Muslim, which is, of course, if the majority is like that, this is the inclination that we're going to see, the people there are going to want to establish rule by Islam, because this is going to be their inherent belief. And why should they not? You know, and it's not something that we should be afraid of. I think we often describe the Caliphate and the Khilafah as something really, really scary. But in actuality, it's just, if you're looking at the Islamic State, and then in its bigger group, a cluster of countries which share vested interests, which want to go by the similar principles or the same principles, why should they not work together and have a unified leader?
Can you have more
What
than
do
one
you
Khalifa?
think of the fact that SAIF finds a lot of laws of this country objectionable.
I
Thinks ISIS is a
many
better
young
way of
people-
living.
I think many young people living in Britain may feel like the British government has pressed them to a state where they become fearful to practice their religion. If you go to student Islamic societies in Britain, you know, they've been called, Theresa May called them a conveyor belt for terrorism. That sort of rhetoric coming from the British government, you know, is extraordinarily scary. So I'm not surprised that we see young people, you know, that are very afraid to practice their religion as they might want to.
We're talking about the concept of a caliph here, and if it's possible in this modern day era. What we've got to look at is when it was first established, and this is a question still no one has been able to answer me when I have asked it, that when the concept of the caliph first came about after the Prophet had died, why is it the case that that was the thing that causes the division between the Ummah itself? We're looking for something where the Ummah is unified, where all of us, differing opinions and sects and whatever else, can get together and agree and unify. Now, if the very thing that we look for in the very beginning is flawed and cause that division, how can we look to it now? Especially in the day and age where there are many different sects, many different opinions. How is it even feasible now? How is it possible?
Yeah, I agree there are disagreements. Maybe people have different schools of thought. But as long as they don't want to disobey the law of the land, they don't want to murder or come out openly and publicly and, you know, declare blasphemy, then obviously that would be an issue.
What about homosexuals? What about...
Obviously we all, I mean, I hope everyone agrees here that, you know, homosexuality is not really part of Islam. But, you know, under the state, if anyone's...
But it's part of society.
It's part of
Yeah,
people.
so obviously when the Islamic State comes, then that will no longer be part of the society, will it?
So as
How
long
will you
as
eradicate that?
So in your
can't
Islamic
get rid of
State,
that.
everyone has to agree with you.
Everyone has to agree with the law of Allah.
We say Islam doesn't permit it, but at the same time...
Well, in Jamaica it's illegal.
Yeah,
So what, you make them straight?
So you make them
eradicate
straight.
What is it?
What would happen under Sharia, obviously, if they're openly homosexual, openly saying, I'm a non-Muslim, I was a Muslim, I'm openly, then they have no choice but to implement the Sharia.
You're being complained about being persecuted
Yeah.
for being a Muslim, yet you would openly persecute someone who is homosexual
I
for
wouldn't
being who they
openly go and say...
Yes, you would.
You want to drive
You just
them
said that.
underground.
That's the implementation of Sharia law.
You want to drive them underground. You don't want them to come out. You don't want them to talk about it.
Are we going to have a caliphate, Yasmin?
The institutional one that SAIF is talking about, it's going to implode because we've seen it again and again throughout history. People have always claimed God on their side. People have always said, yes, mine is correct, and it all falls apart. There is nothing here that tells me that this is going to be any different because everybody is so sure of their own truth.
Joy, are we going to get a caliphate?
Yes, this is a promise that was given to us, and a promise that is given by Allah, and a promise that was conveyed by the Prophet ﷺ. So for that reason, I have no question of a doubt that this will happen.
And you think it is happening, you're just not sure if ISIS are okay, are just?
I am not sure if ISIS are the ones, only because the news that we are getting is subjected to a lot of filters, as you know. So for that reason, I'm not sure. But if it is, I will have no qualms about giving my sort of pledge.
FIDA?
Yeah, I think
You think we already live under a caliphate, so we don't have to wait?
No. I think my understanding of caliphate is different, very different to what a lot of the brothers and sisters have over here. I think it's a spiritual regime. It's not a political regime. I think the whole purpose of a caliph is to bring you closer to God. And alhamdulillah, I'm closer to God under my caliphate. And I think people can only be united through love and peace. Fighting physically, it's not going to bring anyone together. I think the only way to bring anyone to Islam or to bring any of the Muslim brothers and sisters together is through peace, dialogue, and in a peaceful manner.
I think the main problem is this separation of a caliphate or an Islamic state to a system of governance. It's a very normal thing. It's actually a very real thing. It happened over hundreds of years. And I think this idea I think it's a very Orientalist idea that because it's something from the East or because it's something connected to Islam, that it's scary and it's, you know, killing people everywhere.
I support Muslims, non-Muslims alike. I support peace. I do not support a caliphate that wishes to use violence to propagate their own beliefs, their own sectarian belief, their own sect's belief. It's pretty ironic as well that if we were here under a caliphate at this moment in time, this panel will not be taking place.
I am very happy living within this society under a British law, and God forbid if ISIS Caliphate is to be brought here, it's going to be very problematic, and I worry for that.